one checked on me when I needed. So I just stack my bread, stay in my bag and not in my feelings. Overthink too much, I get distracted, start to deep it.
I just took a trade on the GBP JPY. We had a bullish macro bias and I'm aiming to make 20k on this trade. I'm currently floating around 9k in profits. And so it happened. I was able to make 20k. Supply and demand and support and resistance aren't the same concept. I see this mistake being made over and over again, and people just think that they are the same thing, but they aren't. And I'm here to clear the misconception once and for all. I'm going to explain to you why they are different and why trading supply and demand is actually far more superior than trading support and resistance. Now, before going into supply and demand, we need to understand the core of price action. Why does price go up or down? And price action is the interaction between willing buyers and willing sellers, right? And price rises when demand exceeds supply, and price goes down or falls when supply exceeds demand. And we, as traders, we want to, of course, buy at demand zones and sell at supply zones, right? And to understand supply and demand on a deeper level, you need to understand institutional order flow. Now, these big banks play with a lot of capital, right? So they can't, let's say, buy or sell everything at once, or they will make the price too expensive or too cheap for themselves. So they have to accumulate positions gradually at key price levels, creating demand zones, and they have to also distribute positions at higher prices, creating supply zones, right? And these supply and demand formations act as order magnets, and when price comes back in those supply and demand formations, you can expect institutions to buy or sell again, reinforcing these zones. And the third type of demand formation that we can have is the drop based rally. And these formations always consist of three parts, and it always has a first leg that has a big body with small wicks, the basing candles that have a small body with big wicks, and the second leg that also has a big body with small wicks, right? And these formations always have a story. We have learned that price action is the interaction between willing buyers and willing sellers, right? And here in this case, here the willing sellers take over, is then followed by a period of balance between buyers and sellers, and then the willing buyers take over again with this big green candle. But as we have learned, institutions can't buy everything at once, so they will leave some unfilled orders left in this area right here. The next time price comes back in this zone, you can expect institutions to have some unfilled orders left and price to bounce from that level, right? So the second type of demand formation is called the rally base rally, and also always, of course, first leg with big body, small wicks, basing candles with small body and big wicks, and the second leg always has a big body and a small wick. And here the story is the buyers take over, then it's followed by a period of balance between buyers and sellers, and then the buyers take over again, leaving unfilled orders left right here. The next time price comes here, they will fill their unfilled orders, causing the price to bounce from that level right here. And for supply, we also have two formations. The first type of formation is called the rally, basing candles, and the drop. And here the buyers take over, followed by a period of balance, and then the sellers take over again. And of course, they can't sell everything at once, so they will leave some unfilled orders left right here. The next time price comes back in this zone, they will fill their unfilled orders and price will bounce from that level. And the last type of demand formation that we can have is the drop base drop. Okay, so now we understand how these supply and demand formations are formed. We want to look for them in the charts, and once again, for these formations we need to see a big body candle with small wicks followed by small body candles with big wicks, and we also need to see lastly a big body candle with small wicks, right? So let's look for these formations, and I think I see one here. We see here a big body candle with small wicks followed by a small body candle with big wicks, and lastly the second leg, the big body with small wicks. And then once you find these levels, you can take your rectangle tool and you can highlight the level from the highest point of the basing candle to the lowest point like this. You can drag it to the right just like this. So that level right here is a supply formation. It's a drop, base, drop, drop, base, drop. And what happens here is the sellers or the banks institutions sold here, but they can't sell everything at once, so they will leave some unfilled orders left right here. And the next time that price comes back in this specific level, the banks will fill their unfilled orders, causing price to react from that level, right? And as you can see right here, it came in that level and it went down beautifully just like this, right? So that's the power of finding these unfilled institutional orders, right? Now we have found one supply level, let's look for one demand level, right? Where we can find a demand level. Mm, I don't see any demand levels. That's not really a demand level. Uh, I find I found one demand level right here. So here we have a big body candle with small wicks, followed by a small body candle with big wicks, and lastly the second leg, a big body candle with small wicks. So we can highlight this basing candle from the highest point to the lowest point and drag it to the right, just like this. So that's a rally base rally demand formation, rally base rally, and they will have unfilled buy orders left. And when price comes in that zone, it reacts from that level, creating this upward movement, right? So that's how you practice supply and demand formations in the charts and how you can find these unfilled orders left by these institutions in real time, right? Now we understand demand and supply formations. Let's take a look at support and resistance, what the difference is between these two concepts, right? So in this picture right here, we had this rally base rally demand formation, and price came back in this demand, filling some unfilled orders, and price bounced. You see, and a while later it came back in the level. Same story here. But the problem is, the more times price comes back in this demand level, the bigger the chance that these institutions won't have any unfilled orders left and price can just go through the zone, right? So support is just the effect of demand and it gets weaker and weaker the more times it gets tested, right? So it's much safer to only trade demand. Why? That's when the chances are the biggest that these big banks have some unfilled orders left and price will for certain bounce from that level, right? And same for resistance, it's just the effect of supply. The more times price comes back in the level of supply, the bigger the chance that they won't have any unfilled orders left and price will just go through the zone just like this. That's why it's much safer to only trade supply